In the shadows of world power, one man defied the United States for decades, Saddam Hussein, the iron-fisted ruler of Iraq. But what if I told you the CIA spent over 40 years plotting to bring him down, using assassins, secret coups, and a global web of spies, only to fail again and again? Why did the CIA back a young Saddam in a failed assassination, only to try killing him years later? How did Saddam, hunted by the world's most powerful intelligence agency, manage to survive multiple assassination attempts and betrayal within his own ranks? And what secrets did the CIA sacrifice to finally pull him from a filthy spider hole in the sands of Tikrit? From the dark alleys of 1950s Baghdad to the burning oil fields of the Gulf War, to the chaos of the 2003 invasion, this is the true story of espionage gone wrong, of power, deception, and the cost of toppling a dictator. Was it worth it? Or did America's secret war unleash a chaos it could never control? Stay with us as we uncover the CIA's hidden war against Saddam Hussein, and the deadly games that changed the Middle East forever. In the smoke-filled alleys of 1950s Baghdad, a young, restless Saddam Hussein roamed, clutching dreams of power. At just 22, Saddam was already drawing the attention of the world's most powerful intelligence agency, not as an enemy, but as a potential asset. The CIA, fixated on stopping the spread of communism, saw Iraq's Prime Minister Abd al-Karim Qasim as a dangerous Soviet ally. They needed him gone, and Saddam, a rising star in the Arab nationalist Ba'ath Party, was willing to pull the trigger. On October 7, 1959, a CIA-backed six-man hit squad, including Saddam, prepared to ambush Qasim's car in Baghdad. But the plan, crafted in the shadows of Cold War paranoia, fell apart in seconds. Saddam, jittery and inexperienced, opened fire too early, striking Qasim but failing to kill him. Chaos ripped through the street, one assassin's gun jammed, another's grenade lodged in his coat, ready to explode. Amid the screams, Saddam was shot in the leg by his own team, bleeding and terrified, as bullets echoed through Baghdad's dusty roads. But the young assassin didn't die that day. With the CIA's hidden hand and help from Egypt, Saddam escaped across the border to Syria, surviving to fight another day. The botched hit didn't sever the ties between Saddam and the CIA, it strengthened them. In 1963, the Ba'ath Party seized power in Iraq. The CIA was there, providing lists of suspected communists, which led to brutal purges and thousands of executions at the hands of Saddam's allies. The young man who once botched an assassination was now rising, dripping in the blood of America's enemies. Fast forward to the 1980s, and the game twisted further. Iraq was locked in a brutal war with Iran. The CIA, desperate to counter the spread of Iranian influence, fed Saddam's satellite imagery and battlefield intelligence, fully aware he was unleashing sarin and mustard gas on Iranian troops, and even on his own Kurdish people. The United States had turned a young, reckless gunman into a dictator, setting the stage for a deadly future they would one day try to erase. But the young assassin they once protected would soon become the tyrant they couldn't control, setting the stage for a clash that would ignite the entire Middle East. By the 1990s, the man the CIA once quietly aided had become their ultimate target. Saddam Hussein, once a young asset used against communists, was now a dictator who had invaded Kuwait in 1990, igniting the Gulf War and threatening global oil supplies. The United States had supported Saddam when it served their interests, but the moment he turned his tanks toward Kuwait's borders, he crossed a line that would seal his fate. After the swift victory of the Gulf War, the CIA launched a shadow war to finish what the battlefield could not, removing Saddam from power. It was a campaign of whispered promises and midnight deals, a covert mission to destabilize a regime that had proven too dangerous to leave in place. In 1991, the CIA found their man, Mohammed Abdullah Shahani, a respected Iraqi commander who had fled Saddam's wrath and arrived in the United States, burning with a desire for revenge. The CIA backed Shahani as he assembled a team of former Iraqi special forces, aiming to ignite a coup within Baghdad itself. But Saddam's intelligence network, honed through years of brutal purges and fear, moved faster. The coup was crushed in its infancy, Shahani's operatives rounded up, interrogated, and executed. The CIA's first attempt to overthrow Saddam after the Gulf War ended in blood and silence. But the CIA was not finished. In 1995, they tried again, turning to Ahmad Chalabi and his Iraqi National Congress, exiled opposition leaders who promised to bring Saddam down from within. Operating out of Kurdistan, Chalabi and CIA operative Bob Baer crafted what became known as the Bob Plan. It was a daring strategy to combine Kurdish fighters, disaffected Iraqi generals, and even covert Iranian support to spark a revolt inside Iraq, tearing the regime apart from the inside. For a moment, it seemed possible. Fighters trained, meetings were held in shadowy safehouses, and leaflets were prepared to flood Baghdad. But in Washington, fear grew. The Clinton administration worried that a failed uprising would lead to a massacre and potentially drag the US into a deeper war. The support was pulled, the plan collapsed, and Saddam's forces struck swiftly. Hundreds of rebels were hunted down, captured, and executed. Once again, Saddam proved that surviving was his greatest weapon. The tide had turned. The CIA had committed to removing Saddam, but every step forward was met with betrayal, failure, and death. Saddam was no longer an ally. He was now America's obsession, a dictator they could not kill, and a shadow haunting every decision in the Middle East. Yet for all their schemes and secret plots, the CIA was about to learn that taking down a dictator would cost far more than they ever imagined. By 1996, the CIA was desperate. Years of failed coups and crushed rebellions had done nothing to weaken Saddam Hussein's grip on Iraq. The Gulf War had left him battered but alive, and the CIA's shadow war had become a quiet obsession within the halls of Langley. This time, they would go bigger than ever before. Codenamed Bashils, the operation would become the CIA's largest covert mission since the Afghan War. It was a two-pronged assault: ignite a Kurdish rebellion in northern Iraq while simultaneously triggering a coup within Saddam's elite Republican Guard. The goal was clear: topple Saddam within a year, no matter the cost. The CIA poured over $100 million into the operation, funneling weapons, training, and cash into the hands of the Iraqi National Congress led by Ahmad Chalabi. They hired a Washington PR firm to launch a propaganda campaign, flooding Iraq with anti-Saddam leaflets and radio broadcasts to convince the people that change was coming. For a moment, it looked like the plan might succeed. Kurdish fighters in the mountains prepared for battle, while inside Baghdad, whispers of dissent grew among officers weary of Saddam's brutality. But Saddam had spent decades perfecting his rule through paranoia and terror. His intelligence network was everywhere, from dusty Baghdad tea shops to the inner circles of rebel meetings in Kurdistan. Slowly, quietly, Saddam's spies infiltrated the operation, feeding information back to Baghdad while the CIA believed they were on the brink of victory. In June 1996, the trap was sprung. Iraqi forces moved swiftly, arresting key conspirators and dismantling the coup before it could ignite. By August, Saddam's troops launched a brutal invasion into Kurdish territory, sweeping through Erbil with tanks and soldiers, capturing or killing hundreds of CIA-backed agents and rebels. The mountains, once seen as a safe haven, became a killing ground as the CIA scrambled to evacuate their operatives under fire. CIA Director John Deutsch had confidently promised that Saddam would fall within a year. Instead, Bashils ended in humiliation, exposing the agency's operations inside Iraq to the world. Rebels who trusted America were abandoned, captured, or executed, while Saddam's power remained intact, his propaganda machine painting the failed uprising as another foreign plot defeated by the resilience of Iraq. The cost was staggering. The operation had drained resources, burned valuable intelligence networks, and demonstrated to Saddam that the CIA was willing to gamble everything to remove him, and lose. Saddam emerged from the debacle stronger, more paranoid, and more ruthless, knowing that even with all its power and money, America could not touch him. For the CIA, the failure of Bashils was a bitter reminder of the limits of covert action. But in the shadows, the obsession with Saddam only grew. Each failure only deepened Washington's resolve to see the dictator fall, no matter how many times the cost would be paid in blood and betrayal. Defeated in the shadows, America's obsession with Saddam would now erupt into open war, justified by a lie that would change the world forever. By the early 2000s, the CIA's failures to remove Saddam Hussein through coups and covert operations had fueled a new, dangerous momentum in Washington. The obsession to topple Saddam had outlived presidencies, but now, under the Bush administration, that mission would take its most drastic form, a full-scale invasion justified by claims that Saddam possessed weapons of mass destruction and harbored ties to Al-Qaeda. Inside Langley, many CIA analysts quietly doubted these claims. Intelligence trickling in from high-level sources like Iraq's Foreign Minister Naji Sabri and Saddam's intelligence chief Tahir Haboush suggested the uncomfortable truth: Saddam had no active WMD programs, and there were no meaningful ties between Iraq and al-Qaeda. But the narrative was already set, fueled by fear, political momentum, and the burning desire to finish the mission once and for all. The American public was told that Saddam could unleash terror at any moment, that weapons of mass destruction were hidden in the deserts of Iraq, ready to be deployed against the West. The horrors of 9/11 were fresh, and the promise of preventing another catastrophe silenced doubts. As the drums of war beat louder, the CIA prepared for a final strike to remove Saddam before boots even touched Iraqi soil. In 2003, as war preparations escalated, the CIA launched Operation Desert Spider, a targeted airstrike on Saddam's Dora Farms compound, where intelligence suggested he might be spending the night. The goal was clear: decapitate the regime before the invasion began, avoiding a costly ground war by eliminating the dictator in a flash of fire. But the bombs fell, the ground shook, and Saddam walked away unscathed, slipping once again from America's grasp. The invasion went forward. The world watched as Baghdad fell in a matter of weeks, Saddam's statues toppled, and the regime crumbled under the might of American forces. But Saddam himself remained a ghost, vanishing into the chaos of the collapsing state he once ruled with an iron fist. Months later, on December 13, 2003, the CIA's decades-long hunt reached its climax. In a dusty, nondescript patch of farmland near Tikrit, American forces, guided by CIA intelligence and special forces operatives, surrounded a small, hidden underground bunker. Inside, they found him. Saddam Hussein, the man who had once ruled Iraq with absolute authority, was pulled from a spider hole, unkempt, bearded, and defeated. The scene was broadcast across the world, a dictator reduced to a cowering fugitive, captured by the very forces he had spent decades defying. During his interrogations, Saddam revealed a truth that struck at the heart of the war's justification. He admitted that he had resisted UN weapons inspectors not because he was hiding weapons of mass destruction, but because he feared appearing weak in front of Iran, his regional rival. It was a calculated bluff meant for Tehran, not Washington, and it had cost Iraq everything. No weapons of mass destruction were ever found. The search teams combed warehouses, underground bunkers, and desert compounds, only to return empty-handed each time. The intelligence failures that once fueled covert operations had now fueled a war, and the consequences were catastrophic. Iraq, shattered by the invasion, descended into chaos. Sectarian violence erupted, insurgencies formed, and the promise of a swift victory faded into years of brutal conflict. The capture of Saddam, once seen as the final chapter in America's pursuit of a dictator, became instead a prelude to a new nightmare in the Middle East. The CIA's decades-long obsession with Saddam had ended with him in a cell, awaiting trial. But the cost of that obsession was a nation in ruins, thousands of lives lost, and a legacy that questioned whether removing Saddam was worth the price paid in blood, treasure, and stability. The dictator was gone, but the chaos remained, a haunting reminder that in the shadows of geopolitics, even victory can become a curse. But as the smoke cleared and the dictator fell, a darker question remained: was the price of removing Saddam worth the chaos left behind? Saddam Hussein's fall in December 2003 was supposed to mark the triumphant end of a decades-long mission. For the CIA, it was the final scene in a covert saga that began in the backstreets of Baghdad in 1959, a mission that saw the agency help a young, ruthless Saddam rise, then spent 40 years trying to destroy the monster they helped create. But when the dust settled, the truth was undeniable. Toppling Saddam had unleashed chaos far more devastating than his brutal reign. The dictator who once ruled Iraq with fear and iron-fisted propaganda was dragged from a spider hole, disheveled and powerless. His trial, his defiance in court, and his eventual execution made global headlines. But behind those images, the real consequences were just beginning. With Saddam gone, the power vacuum fractured Iraq along ancient sectarian fault lines. Shia militias, Sunni insurgents, foreign jihadists, all swept into the void left behind. Baghdad streets turned into battlegrounds, neighbors became enemies, and car bombs replaced statues as symbols of the new Iraq. The CIA's obsession with removing Saddam was driven by decades of miscalculations and half-truths. They once saw him as a useful ally against communism. They armed him with intelligence during the Iran-Iraq War, even as he unleashed poison gas on civilians. When he turned into a threat, they tried everything: assassinations, coups, rebellions, but failed each time. And when those covert games collapsed, they paved the road for a full-scale invasion, sold to the world on shaky intelligence about weapons that did not exist. What did it cost? Trillions of dollars. Over 4,000 American soldiers lost, hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians dead, and a generation haunted by the consequences of a war justified by fear rather than facts. Saddam Hussein's story is more than a dictator's rise and fall. It's a lesson in the danger of short-term alliances and the arrogance of secret wars. It's a testament to how intelligence, when twisted to fit a narrative, can steer nations into chaos they can't easily escape. For the CIA, it remains a case study in the limits of power. Even the world's most secretive agency could not control the monster it once fed. Today, Iraq still struggles to rebuild from the fractures left behind, and America still debates whether it was worth it, whether removing Saddam truly made the world safer, or simply replaced one evil with another form of chaos. So, what do you think? Did the CIA's secret war on Saddam Hussein save the Middle East, or did it light a fuse that burns to this day? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more untold stories of covert wars, dictators, and the dark chessboard of global power, make sure to subscribe, share, and stay tuned. History doesn't just repeat, it hides in the shadows, waiting for the next mission, the next target, and the next lesson we might fail to learn.